what we want to talk about is, this idea that going to college, making that investment. The question now is often raised, what's the return on that investment? And specifically for liberal arts colleges, there's even more of skepticism around what it is that students are getting through that education. So I'm here to tell you they get a lot, and I have 4 wonderful examples here on the panel. So I'm going to just introduce myself. I guess I should start there. My name is Kate Traskus. I'm the Assistant Dean of Career Education here at Marlboro, and my office really works at getting students to take what it is that they're learning, their passions, all of that theory, and bridge that and put it into practice. And whether that be through externships, internships, intensive semester courses that pair them with community partners, going away from Marlboro for a semester, all of those things to really round out the full experience that they could have here at Marlboro. So I'd like all of you to introduce yourselves. Let us know the year that you graduated and what it is that you're doing now.
My name is Alexa Boggs, and I graduated in 2013. I'm an attorney for an aerospace corporation in DC, in the DC area, and I studied politics with Meg and Lynette here.
I'm Sean Piles. I graduated 2013 as well. I'm currently living in Portland, and I'm writing about personal finance for a for a personal finance tech company based in San Francisco, where I just moved from a few months ago.
I'm Gretchen Chapman. I graduated in 2014. I live in New York, and I work for Random House Children's Books. I'm an account manager. And I studied with Gloria, John, and Tim, and I did a combination of visual arts and literature.
I'm Morgan Ingalls, and I graduated in 2010. Feel old. And I live here. I live in the town of Marlboro, but I work up in Maine at Acadia National Park during the summer as I was a bat biologist. And while I was here, I worked with Todd and Allison doing molecular biology.
So cool. Thank you. So how about why Marlboro? When you thought about getting into college and maybe even thinking about what you were going to do beyond, what was it that really drew you to Marlboro?
Well, I had a weird experience. I was the most annoying kid in high school, and I was straight A student, president of everything, in every play. I was in sports. I was doing everything that I could to get into an Ivy League school, and that was what I was putting all of my eggs in that basket, and just didn't even think about anything else really. And I was stupid enough and did not have guidance to apply to safety schools. I was a very arrogant 18-year-old. So I applied only to Ivies. And then when I don't know if anyone else did this, but you basically get your letter from all of them on the same day because they coordinate this. And so I just got 5 rejection letters all at once while sitting in a Panera with my mom and dad and stepdad and sister. I hate Panera. So at that point I was kind of just actually forced to think about what I wanted to do rather than this thing that I had been thinking in my whole life was what I should be doing. And I came up with a crazy, I was just going to go do, some random work at an inn in Nazareth. And my dad was like, okay. And then he is a professor, and he knew about Marlboro because a friend of his had gone here, and he had always been jealous of the professors who get to teach here. And he is a big believer in the Oxford tutorial system and said, this is the one school you can go to where you can actually learn mind to mind with the professor, and you really have an opportunity to read everything that professor has to offer, rather than just being given what a professor chooses to give you in a classroom setting. So I called, and guy in admissions answered and wanted to know how my day was, and I was used to the Ivy League office that was, well, what's your SAT, what's your GPA, and he just wanted to know how my day was and tell me about his fishing experience, and told me I could apply that afternoon and that they'd let me know in a week. And it was May of my senior year of high school, and I applied and decided I was coming here and visited. And I mean, I always have a hard time answering this question, and it's very long-winded, but for me, I wanted a school in New England, and I wanted like the best education. And after I fell completely flat on my face in front of everyone who I was seeking approval from, Marlboro was the one school that sold me on I was still going to get the best education available, and it was going to be really awesome, and no one else was going to have this cool of an experience, so I would still get to brag about that.
Great answer.
Mine was a little more straightforward, I guess. I went to a very big high school in the suburb of Chicago. My graduating class was 900. There were 3 other schools the same size in the same town, and I was just one in a sea of many, too many it seemed. And I wanted a much smaller experience, which we got here, and I also knew I wanted to write. And this had both. I heard about this place from my dad's now ex-wife, who went here in the early 90s. And she heard me talking about how I didn't like big public schools, didn't want to go to a big university, and wanted somewhere where I could just focus on my academics. I was very easily distracted in most of my public education, and I knew that if I was in the city, I wouldn't do very well. And so I just buried myself away in Marlboro College for a few years and got the education I wanted.
So I went to a really big competitive public high school, and I just kind of felt like I was streamlined for this path that I was really not interested in. And a friend and I, we did a college tour with my mother, and we were going to sort of more traditional colleges, and I was like literally tearing my hair out because I just could not see myself anywhere. And so she actually got Colleges That Change Lives by Lauren Pope, right? Yes, okay. And she found Marlboro, and we took a tour, and our tour guide, I remember she lifted up her arm, and she'd totally grown out all of her armpit hair. And I was like, this is the school for me.
My answer is a little bit more like Alexia's, actually, in that I got here in a kind of roundabout way. I am a transfer student, or transfer student, I guess I'm not a student anymore. And so I went to Hampshire College first, and that was a bad fit for me, and I took a year off and sort of I was doing administrative work at a local music festival, and like kind of didn't really know what I was going to do. And then a friend of mine was the IT director here, and because I'm from this area, I'm from Brattleboro. And he said, well, you know, it was like June, I think, and he said, Marlboro's still accepting transfer students. You could you could apply. And I was like, oh, well, Marlboro has small classes, and like, there's good, it's a good student-teacher ratio, and but Marlboro had a lot of the things that I was looking for in a school, and so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll see how that goes. And so it was sort of similar, where I was like, hey, yeah, transfer student, and they were basically like, oh yeah, well, sure, like, we'll let you know tomorrow or whatever. Maybe not quite that soon, but no problem. So yeah, I started that fall, and it turned out to be just a really, really good fit for me. So
yeah, that's great. So at Marlboro, we talk a lot about coming and studying broadly and taking advantage of the faculty, finding out what you're passionate about. How did Marlboro help you all find your passion?
Sorry, we can go in a different order.
Yeah. I can go first, I guess. My very first semester here, I took a class on new journalism, and that was a way for me to kind of channel my passion for writing into something that seemed like a real viable career. And so from that first point of jumping off and doing writing, I thought this is a way where I can actually collaborate with my professor, but also find a new way to transfer my skills into something. And ironically, I actually didn't have a lot of journalism classes at Marlboro. There was only that one my first semester, and so I looked out to Brattleboro, to the Commons, a local weekly paper, where I started interning, and then from there I interned at papers in Chicago and kind of climbed my way up the internship ladder to getting my first writing gig. And so it was that first connection of, okay, I can write, I have a job that will allow me to do that I feel passionate about, but also I'm going to have to look out into the world, which is kind of the best of Marlboro.
Okay. So I think maybe I'm a little bit unlike a lot of Marlboro students in that when I got here, I wasn't like, oh, I am so into whatever, marine biology, and that's what I want to do. I got here and I was like, well, I like science, but like, I'm happy to do anything in science. And I think it really helps that I found, so Todd Smith is amazing, and Allison Turner is also amazing. And both of them really, I think through taking some classes with them in the first sort of semester and year that I was here, that sort of like focused on, oh, I really like doing this molecular biology stuff. And then Todd was really helpful saying when it came to do plan, I was like, oh, I don't really know how to pick something for plan. And Todd said, well, you do all this caving stuff, like, is there anything with that you could do? And I thought, oh yeah, like, of course. White nose syndrome is this. So white nose syndrome is a fungal infection that affects bats. Oh, somebody knows about it yet. And so it was really just starting to hit the U.S. at that time, and so the timing worked out well. And so having Todd to sort of help me along the way and sort of suggest things that might, well, what about this? Oh yeah, that's so obvious. But I just didn't think about it. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think I have more of sort of a momentary example. Hi, Gloria. But I took a class with Gloria called For Once Then Something True. It's an American Lit class. And she taught Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, which is like a really hard book. If you read it, it's just really hard. And she just did the most beautiful lecture I'd probably ever experienced, and I could just feel like new pathways in my brain opening up, and I just can't, I mean, there are like very few moments in my life that I like remember like that. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Wait, no, okay, sorry. So Gretchen and I were cottage mates, and Gretchen like really just gets Faulkner in a way that I think is, Gloria could probably speak to this better, but I think is really rare. And she would come home, and if you've read Faulkner, it's not exactly the best thing to end the day talking about. And that really inspired you in your art and literature as well. I mean, you really like saw crossovers. If you don't remember it, I do.
Thanks, pal.
She did an amazing art show on like some of the symbolism from that really, like when you're reading Faulkner, it's what you would see in your head or what you should see after seeing this art show, and just really like capturing the lighting and the sound. And we went to an Easter church service in Brattleboro to like record that sound for your art show, and I think that like that, I'm not surprised that that moment was so memorable for you, because it inspired not just your plan, but like really like books, like wanting to work in books, and that's what you do now. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But yeah, I think it really taught me to sort of be intellectually ambitious and adventurous in my reading and writing. So thank you, Gloria.
I guess I gave up my turn, but I'll just say I think I would disagree a little bit with, and this is, I speak for myself and not for Marlboro College on this point, I guess, but I think there are really two ways to approach an education at Marlboro, and one is what you're talking about, this broad learning, liberal arts education, where maybe you don't know what you want to study, and a professor inspires you, or a book inspires you, or a class really just like sets off your imagination, and you figure out what you're passionate about. And I think another way to approach it is, I know exactly what I want to do. I know that I want to get a master's in such and such, or I want to teach, or I want to, for me it was I want to be a lawyer. So coming in and working with so I always said I studied broadly within politics, which was I just worked with the professors to say, well, what basically would be a more enriched version of a pre-law program, and what do I need to know that will set me ahead for law school? What I didn't know was what kind of law I wanted to practice, so that I did not learn in the classroom, but a friend of mine, dear friend, Eric Toldy, was a couple years ahead of me and did his plan on the space race, and was very well known for being a space enthusiast and is now a space historian. And he had me, as we all do. I love this about Marlboro, that you can peer edit papers in an honest way, because in law school we weren't even allowed to read each other's work for spelling, grammar, anything like that. So it was something I took for granted here, that you could read each other's work without the integrity of your work being questioned. And he let me read his, and he was asking for my thoughts on his arguments and ideas. And I was so blown away by the fact that the lessons of the space race were going to be so relevant to my lifetime and everything that was going on in politics and commerce, and the intersection of space and commerce. So I realized, oh my gosh, I bet space law is a thing. And I'm going to look it up, and there are 2 schools with a space law program, and so I didn't figure it out in class, but I figured it out sitting outside Apple Tree with Eric Toldy's plan.
That's amazing. I think that's so true, that at Marlboro, these opportunities for learning are happening all around and all the time, right? And that you, as you said, learn alongside your faculty and then also with your peers. Thank you for that. It's incredible. So getting to your passion, getting through plan, and then launching into the world. How was that transition for all of you? And what pieces about your experience here at Marlboro do you feel really prepared you for that?
So I graduated from Marlboro, and I didn't really know exactly what I wanted. I knew I wanted to do more education, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I took a year off and kind of cast about a little bit. And then I ended up doing a master's in conservation biology, and through that sort of discovered that I really like doing field work, and I really like working outside and with animals, and so the more molecular lab-based stuff that I'd done at Marlboro really fed into, or sort of transitioned into doing field work. So I completely lost my train of thought. So one thing that I was just talking to Allison about at lunch that really helped me from Marlboro is the clear writing requirement, and getting everybody has to show that they can write competently. And now that I work with the rest of the world, I'm always shocked at how poorly people write, because I did not think of myself as a very good writer while I was here, but when I saw other people's writing after I had left, I discovered that actually I'm not that bad a writer, and that writing is really important to communicate your ideas to the world. And so being able to write well has helped me communicate, but also being able to look at other people's writing and say, yeah, we really need to clean this up, because otherwise nobody has any idea what you're trying to say with this report. So that's made a really big difference for me.
Well, I would say my career path, I mean, it's this very niche example, but I actually got my publishing internship from Craigslist, which is really unusual, but I just went in there and rattled off everything I'd ever read and kind of wowed him, and that was probably not going to happen, but yeah, I mean, I think that it has, I feel sort of confident talking about books. I feel confident having lunch with people, which is a big thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all.
For For me, I would say it was Marlboro's focus on skill development, writing being one of them, and self-direction that really helped me write after college. I had been used to moving places. I'm from Chicago, moved out here, and then after I graduated, moved out to the Bay Area, where my twin sister was at the time. And I had these internships under my belt and figured I might as well get another one. So I interned at San Francisco Magazine. And then I had some, at that point, pretty decent municipal journalism experience. And then I was hired to write for a city website elsewhere in the Bay Area, in Richmond, if anyone knows where that is. And then through writing there for a couple of years, I was picked up as a staff writer at this personal finance tech company, NerdWallet, where I do journalism about personal finance stuff for them. And so it was really just one thing to the next, but also like always forging forward and relying back on my skills to the point where now I'm producing a podcast for them and I'm still doing kind of what I want to do, but within their frame. So.
Yeah, I would say I was very involved in the community aspect of Marlboro because I'm sure for other students as well, but for a politics student, Marlboro is like an enormous playground where you can, and Meg Mott in particular is a professor who encourages you to take what you're learning in the classroom and test it out on her colleagues, which is funny. Just putting that together. But so she was really good at encouraging us to take those theories and then formulate a policy change and go to the appropriate committee for that it would have to go through, and then persuade those people that it was the right policy. And then you got to see that policy take place, sometimes the next week, and sometimes, now, like, we see the smoking gazebo, and that was being debated in town meeting here, so that's, like, really exciting to see. I've never thought that would bring me such joy, but it's cool to see something actually come about. And I think for me, like, those skills, to be able to go into a room and speak to whoever was on that committee, Catherine and I were on the committee on faculty together, Sean was on social committee. Just going to those committees and being able to handle that there's a time limit on what you have to say. You have to consider what everyone thinks. There is someone in the room who vehemently disagrees with you, and you're going to have to persuade them probably because you all live on campus together. And that's a really good microcosm of what my day-to-day office life is like, whether it's taking place over email or actually in an office. Someone is vehemently disagreeing with me on a legal policy, and they're not a lawyer, and I am, and I have to figure out a way to say that without saying what I just said. I would say that's probably the most practical skill that I learned at Marlboro, was how to basically persuade people to do what needs to happen by the end of the meeting, and also to listen to people who have a different idea and maybe come up with actually what compromise looks like. And I would say the second most kind of concrete takeaway for me from Marlboro was that Vermont is such a small world, obviously, and everyone is really connected, and that can be, one of the things I thought of when I was choosing a law school was, I kind of want to go to a school that has a bigger alumni network. But the thing about Vermont is that even though it's small, everyone knows everyone. So one of the biggest assets of my time at Marlboro was that the president at the time, Ellen, had worked for Senator Leahy. And so I used her as a recommendation to get an internship. And that internship, I totally 100% only got that internship because of that relationship, and that's just a fact of life. And the fact that I was able to get that internship while here meant that I was able to get a law clerkship with him later. And it was while he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, which you all may have been hearing about in the news this week. A really important committee, and so I learned a lot from that. Just that relationships matter, and cultivating those relationships on a campus, and when you know you're going to have to see the person and have lunch with them and interact with them, of really valuing what they have to say and not plowing through what your agenda is. That was a big lesson for me. Still learning.
Can I make one?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make like one more plug for town meeting, because I'm now on the board of 2 different nonprofits, and having had town meeting and sort of the decision-making process that happens with town meeting has really helped me be a good board member and like an effective board member on those 2 boards, where I can be like, okay, I know how this works. Like, yeah, here, I'm going to try and like persuade you of my point in this set amount of time and trying to move forward with this, whatever issue we're struggling with. And that's a really useful thing in the world.
Absolutely. So at Marlboro, we've been talking a lot about the real beauty and value of this education model, and the idea that you can come here, you can study what you're passionate about now, and also that we want to promise that students are leaving Marlboro with some very tangible, transferable skills. So the ability to write with clarity and precision, clearly heard about that. This idea of living, working, and communicating with a wide range of individuals, working across difference. And this idea that you will have the ability to manage a really ambitious project from idea to execution. So no one specifically referenced plan, so I'm a little curious about that one.
Well, I will just say that I think it's funny that plan is really what you're thinking about the entire time you're at Marlboro. You know, it is the focus. What is your plan going to be on? And as a freshman and sophomore, you can't wait to figure out what your plan's going to be on. And you probably already know what it is, and you know change it 10 times. And it's a very plan-centric experience. And I won't speak for the rest of you, but for me, yeah, I don't really think about my plan ever, and I will say, I mean, plan for me was really an example. I will always remember at my first, not commencement, the other one. Convocation. The president at the time, Ellen, said something that stuck with me, which was, while you're here, I want you to feel free to fail, like as much as you need. And, you know, she said that to inspire us to come up with really exciting ideas and to really innovate even in this, you know, very traditional setting. Well, whatever, you know, kind of traditional setting. And my plan is a perfect example of me feeling free to fail, because I remember my takeaway was that I had a lot of ideas and I didn't really, I was not as successful as some of my other classmates at really harnessing everything that I was thinking about and putting it into a clear thing. And that honestly was probably the most beneficial experience I had going into law school, of knowing, okay, when you're writing a paper, we can't talk about these three completely disparate things without a unifying theme. And I did fine, but you know, plan for me was always this thing of like, okay, that's an example of we can do better. And so going into law school, I had the clear writing, which was a huge asset. So I will say that for me, plan was an exercise in like getting the rest of my like bad writing habits out. And then law school is like, here, have some more bad habits that will make your writing very bland. But managing a project from beginning to end, and then for me being able to take ownership and actually assess how well you did on it, rather than just kind of like joining in the like chorus of I did plan and therefore I'm a god. You know, for me that was true for a lot of my friends. They just knocked it out of the park, and for me it was you did plan. You know, so you know, good job, and you can go back and read it and learn from that, and now you know what that process looks like and how to make that a better process. So I'll go first so that we can end on a higher note.
That's great.
Okay. Well, I would say as far as my day-to-day life goes, plan is not incredibly relevant. I'm in sales, so it's about sort of socializing and making calls and schmoozing. But I do think that plan really helped me sort of hone my personal voice, which helps you stand out in any situation. And I don't really care what I say, and I'll just say what I want, and for some reason, like, that works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that's all I got on plan.
I was just scratching my head. So my plan, I guess it was an extension of my internships. I used what I had published for my independent project. That's what it's called, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was great because I already had these bylines. So I was like using exactly what I had been doing to hone my skills as part of my plan. And I'm still writing and doing things. So in that sense, it's still continuing to this day. And also this like very interesting moment in politics. I've been thinking about it more just as of late. My plan was about transformative forms of media in moments of political crisis, in ways that media changes as politics change, and I focused on apartheid South Africa and post-World War II Italy, and the ways that new media coming into a world was affecting politics. And now it seems like Twitter is running our country, so that is fascinating as well. And that's just an aside. I don't know what it means for anything, but it's funny the ways that I find those ideas still circle back to what we're working on.
Okay, I have a really different experience from most of you. I think about my plan all the time, mostly because I still work in more or less the same field, and papers that I read as research for plan, I reference, if not daily, then weekly. And, well, so part of that is that doing plan from beginning to end, like coming up with an idea, and for me, because it was science, a question, and taking that through to the end where you do research, and then you do analysis, and then you make some conclusions. That process in science is a process that you do on a daily basis. And so I then went and got a master's, and when I did my master's thesis work, I had already basically done it once, and in fact, I would say that what I did at Marlboro was harder than what I did for my master's thesis. And I've heard that from a number of alumni in sciences who have gone on, or in the sciences who have gone on to do either master's or PhD work. There was something else I was going to say. Oh well, but yeah. Oh, I know what it was. That I've had to, in my job, I've had to manage like summer-long projects where we're, I don't know, catching bats and looking at one thing for the whole summer. And having done plan and like gone through that process, and then done my master's thesis too, it gives me something to like start with when I say like, okay, now I'm going to do this for the summer. And then at the end you have to write a report, and I mean that's kind of a tiny plan right there. It's the same, for me, the same format. So having done it here and done it well here, yeah, it's been a really good thing for me going on.
Great. So we have been talking a lot about careers and Marlboro, and just wondering if you all felt prepared, as it says here in our description, that Marlboro prepared you.
Not 100%. Yeah, I think Marlboro has room to improve, and I think that's why constantly, every year or every 5-10 years, faculty and staff and students are all engaging in what are we doing that's not enough, and how do we reach more of our students, and how do we have more successful students, and who's not being heard here, and who doesn't have an opportunity here to do what they want, or who feels out of place here. So I think the college is aware of the fact that it's not 100% there as well, and it's constantly trying to improve on that and figure out better ways to prepare students for the 21st century economy or whatever. But I think that those 3 skills that you mentioned, 100%. Yeah, I was a much better writer than anyone else in my law school class, except for the other students who had gone to like a similar liberal arts writing focused school, which aren't very many. I think what I was saying prepared me most was committee work and town meeting, stuff like that, because most college students aren't being prepared to walk into a room where the college dean, your professors, your friends, maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're all in a room and you're trying to get one thing done, and you maybe disagree with someone where it's inconvenient that relationship is that way. Like no other college is preparing you for that, and so I felt very at ease with that. Made interviews for jobs much easier, and just being able to walk into a room and talk to anybody and find common ground and then move the conversation forward to whatever it was I was trying to get, which was sometimes a job. And then the last one with managing a project from beginning to end, I just think that that's clearly the cornerstone of a Marlboro education, and it's preparing you to do exactly what Morgan was just talking about, of being able to recognize, I've done this before, I've been here before, whether it's on a larger or smaller scale, I know the steps and the process, and I know when I've veered off the path and when I'm just asserting my own conclusion and haven't gathered the facts yet. And so I think that's the best way that it prepared me. I do think Marlboro can do a better job, and I think it is trying to, of really connecting the entire community, because those relationships are invaluable. So, and I know this now because I went to a big law school. I went to Ole Miss, and so they have a huge alumni network, and the value of just it being so expansive can be great. But I will say that I've gotten more from fewer connections at Marlboro than a larger, wider net at Ole Miss. So I think that sometimes Marlboro community members value so much of what was precious to us while we were here, or what is currently precious to us while we're here, just sort of the authenticity and uniqueness, and but that we forget that it is still a business, and you're still, this is still the preface to the book that it will be your life. And you know what if the preface doesn't prepare you for chapter 1, you don't need a preface. So I think making sure that we figure out whether that is for a nonprofit, or whether that is volunteer work, or whether it is a job, and being able to contribute and build this community up so that we can preserve what we love most about this place. I do think we can do better on that.
Thank you.
I'll echo what Alexa said, yes and no. The main no being connecting to the outside world. And that's really where my internships were the key. I had to get out there, and that wasn't through any push of a professor. It was me saying or seeing there weren't journalism classes here. How can I get that? And then I was very lucky to be able to use that in my plan. Just, you can craft it as you like. But I think the school could do more just to show students here that there's a lot more than this hill, because when you're here, it seems like it's the whole world, especially in winter. But there's a lot that we can do in that regard, especially beyond New England as well, and just showing how we can connect with other professionals in whatever field you may want to go into.
Well, I'm just gonna, I'm a very disorganized person, and I sort of surround myself with people who are like very prepared. But I just want to say, like, you'll be fine, and you're not gonna crash and burn. I had no idea what I was gonna do after college, and you just kind of figure it out. I mean, if you can get a resume together, great. So yeah, step one, get there. And like, I remember the week before I graduated, I read like an article in Cosmo that said like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. And so I just took that to heart for the next 6 months. But Marlboro appreciates that and accepts me for being disorganized and maybe not thinking ahead. And I really needed that. So I just, I drank a bunch of coffee on an empty stomach today, so I'm just
Did Marlboro, what was your question again?
This idea about preparation, and you feel prepared. Did you feel prepared?
Well, I feel like I kind of talked about that already, but yes, for the sciences and going to do a master's, I was way more prepared than anybody else who was starting grad school with me that year. Although that maybe had to do with the grad school that I went to, but whatever. And then moving into a job after that, yes, I felt quite prepared, and I think I'm sure that's different in different fields. And I do think that one thing that we could work on, and that I know that the college is planning on working on, is that like connections outside of the community. And I think for me, maybe I feel less like that didn't happen when I was here because I'm from this area and I continued to do a lot of things with the community while I was a student here, which probably really helped me feel like, oh, I'm still connected to the greater community. But I can imagine if you came from not here and suddenly you were like, oh my gosh, like I don't have a car and I live on campus and like there's snow. I mean, it's hard to get out into the wider community and I'm glad that's something that we're really planning to work on because I think it'll be beneficial.
Yeah. So I wanted to give a little pause for some opportunity for questions, if anyone has any, and then I have a final thing I was going to share. Any questions for our wonderful guests here?
I have a question for Morgan. So did you feel that the school really had the materials and the availability, that's a weird way to phrase this, I'm sorry, the resources to foster your curiosity?
Yes. So I feel like Marlboro doesn't talk this up enough. We have a great science program. Really, really good science program. And so when I was here, do we still have a Vermont Genetics Network connection?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't do as much with them, but we are still connected.
Yeah. So when I was here, there's the Vermont Genetics Network out of UVM in Burlington, and so I had a class where there was a connection that we had with them for like trying to, so yeah, we're small, we don't have a huge lab, like that's how it goes, but I could work with them and use their lab or send samples to them, and so we did that in the class, and then I also did that for my plan. And there's also, if you feel like you don't have enough of the resources during the school year, there's a lot of like, I don't know, 6 or 8 week summer internship programs that lots and lots of big universities offer, and I know that, so I didn't take advantage of that, but I know that other students went off and did summer internships at like big universities with really big labs, and so they got some more experience there. But actually talking to other people who did biochemistry degrees as undergraduates, I think sometimes I did more almost, because I don't know, we have like the number of students who are in the lab is a small number, and so you get to do everything, and I don't know, Allison's a really good lab coordinator, so like there's a lot of stuff where it was like, oh, well, maybe we should do, like this would be a fun thing to do, or like this would be an interesting thing to do, and there were a lot of times that you managed to like pull together the resources so that it was like, oh yeah, like we want to work with human cells? Okay, sure, we can do that. And so yeah, I do feel like there were the resources to go after whatever I was interested in.
What was the biggest struggle trying to get to where you are and where you wanted to be?
Getting hired? Yeah, I mean, gosh, that's a really good question. I feel like you were kind of answering.
I think the struggle was just the uncertainty of this college. My first year in the Bay Area, I was interning, so I was essentially paying to work at this magazine, and it was a great experience, and I wouldn't have gotten to where I am without that. But that said, I was like also like folding shirts at Gap and like eating beans all the time, and so it's like it's hard, and like there's going to be that part where you just struggle and push through it, and knowing that it's going to work out if you keep pushing and working and focusing on what you want to focus on. That's the hardest part, because it's easy to lose sight of it, and just knowing that if you work hard enough, you know, much likely something's going to happen with it. So just having the long-term view, I think, is the key there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like all of my friends, so I have obviously lots of friends from Marlboro, and then a lot of friends from law school, and completely different sets of people. And so, like I said, I went to Ole Miss, so it was a lot of kids who had gone to state schools and then were going to another state school, or possibly the same state school for law school. And I would say across the board, both my classmates from Marlboro and my classmates from law school all had the exact same struggle, which was you don't go straight into your dream job. And that's really tough, because that's all you're thinking about when you're here and when you're in school is, I can't wait to do this really cool thing and to be right in the middle of the really cool thing I want to do. And the reality is that community doesn't trust to put you into that dream job that you want. So you have to grind it out by folding Gap shirts and taking a free internship at the really cool place that will eventually turn into a job that you're really satisfied with. And for me, that meant working as a temp I'll just share this like really sad story of I worked in like a row with like 20 other young attorneys who had just passed the bar, but weren't necessarily being hired just yet because it was like November, and we all had numbers instead of names, and it was dry and it was winter and we were constantly getting dehydrated, and my job was to review, like telecom towers that you just see on road trips. My job was to review the lease agreements between like Joe Farmer who lives there and then the company, and review the lease and summarize every provision of the lease, and then just keep doing that. There was never an end. So it was really bad. And then the first day, and then I got my dream job by just constantly going to conferences and just taking the hit that I'm not going to get paid today because I have to go to this conference to network with space law people. And at that conference, I landed my dream job and was like, I work for an aerospace corporation and I'm an attorney. And on day one, my boss came to my office and he was like, can you review this lease agreement? And I was like, yeah, that'll take me 5 seconds. But I do think across the board, and I feel bad speaking for lots of people, but I know that at least the three of us share this in that, like, Gretchen had to pour coffee and worked for an amazing free internship where she learned everything she needed to get to where she is now. And Sean did the same, like he said, and I had to do the same. And it's tough, and you feel like a failure, and you don't want to talk to your friends because you don't get to say I made it. But you have to do it. If you actually want to get to the place you want to get, you have to take a lot of unpaid gigs and do embarrassing jobs.
I guess that's the 21st century aspect.
That's the 21st century economy. Good job.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I had to do a lot of unpaid volunteer work to get the jobs that I've had, and even now I work as a seasonal technician, and so I'm done at the end of this month and I don't have a job. If I want to do this job again next summer, yeah, I can probably get it, but there's a bunch of months there that I don't have anything lined up yet, and it's a lot of, but yeah, the uncertainty is the really hard part.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then the part that I don't like but is very helpful is the going to conferences and networking.
The hustle.
Which, boy, I hate networking, but that is often how you get your next job. And if it isn't how you get your next job, then it's at least how you get your name out there, and then people are like, oh yeah, I kind of remember you from this conference, and yeah. But the uncertainty is really hard.
So that's actually a perfect segue into a little plug I would like to make, which is Marlboro College has launched a exclusive community online called Branch Out. And if you join Branch Out as a Marlboro student, alum, faculty, staff, friend of the college, then you have access to people like up here on our panel to help you network and to make connections, and even just to ask those questions to say, oh, I'm in this part of my plan thing, any advice? And knowing that this is an open and warm community that has been